My name is Daisy, and I just turned 34. When I was 12 years old, my father and stepmother abandoned me after deciding my half-sister Jessica was the better child. Those words haunted me for years. Last week, I saw my family for the first time in over 2 decades. They are completely broke, living in a rundown apartment. And that better child, I found her mopping floors at the company where I'm now a senior director. Life has a way of coming full circle. Before I tell you this story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to rebuild your life after someone threw you away. I was born in a small town just outside of Portland. Those early years were filled with so much love. My mother Lynette was everything to me. She was creative, hardworking, and had this laugh that could light up the darkest room. She worked as a kindergarten teacher and adored children. My father Thomas was more traditional and strict, but back then I felt safe with him too. He worked in construction, building homes for other families while making sure ours was stable. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house with a small backyard where Mom planted sunflowers every spring. We weren't rich by any means, but we had enough. Mom made sure I never felt like I was missing anything important. She would sew my clothes sometimes, making them even more special than store-bought ones. Dad would take me fishing on Saturdays when the weather was nice. Those memories seem like they belong to a different lifetime now. Everything changed when I was 8. Mom started getting tired all the time. At first, she blamed it on working too hard, but then came the doctor's appointments that kept multiplying. I remember sitting in our living room when they told me she had cancer. I didn't fully understand what that meant, just that something invisible was making my mother sick, and everyone was scared. Over the next 2 years, our home transformed from a place of laughter to a house of whispers. Dad started working longer hours, claiming we needed the money for medical bills. Mom tried to keep things normal for me, but I could see her fading. She lost her beautiful brown hair, and her eyes seemed to sink deeper into her face. Still, she would read to me every night, even when she could barely keep her eyes open. The worst day of my life happened when I was 10. I came home from school to find my Aunt Martha sitting on our porch, her eyes red from crying. Mom had passed away that morning. Dad was at the hospital, unable to face coming home to tell me. I remember screaming until my voice gave out, then feeling nothing at all. After Mom died, Dad changed. He was like a ghost in our house, barely speaking, barely eating. I tried to take care of him, making simple meals and trying to keep the house clean the way Mom had taught me. Looking back, I was desperately trying to hold on to what remained of our family. But Dad was drowning in grief and poor choices. 6 months after we buried Mom, Dad introduced me to Sarah. She worked at the office of his construction company, handling paperwork and scheduling. He said they had become friends when she helped him with insurance forms for Mom's treatments. Even at 10, something felt off about that explanation, but I was desperate for our family to heal. Sarah moved in 2 months later, bringing her 8-year-old daughter, Jessica. I tried to welcome them. I really did. I showed Jessica my books and toys, offered to share my room until Dad could fix up the spare room. I thought maybe having another kid in the house would help fill the emptiness. I was so naive. The first red flag appeared when Dad decided to give Jessica my mom's craft room instead of using the smaller spare room. He cleared out Mom's supplies, her half-finished projects, her special things. When I cried, Sarah told me I was being selfish and that we all needed to move on. Dad said nothing to defend me or Mom's memory. Then came the new clothes for Jessica, while I still wore the same ones Mom had bought before she got sick. Jessica got to choose restaurants when we rarely ate out, while my preferences were ignored. She got bedtime stories and goodnight hugs while I was told I was too old for such things. Every day the message became clearer: Jessica was their child. I was just someone who lived in their house. Sarah was clever in her cruelty. She never showed her true nature when Dad was paying attention. To him, she was sweet and concerned, always framing her actions as trying to help me adjust or become more independent. In reality, she was systematically pushing me out of my own family. Despite everything, I excelled at school. My teachers praised my intelligence and resilience, unaware of what was happening at home. I thought maybe if I brought home perfect report cards, won spelling bees and science competitions, Dad would see me again, would be proud of me again. But my achievements were met with indifference while Jessica's average grades were celebrated. The worst fight started when I tried to protect Mom's remaining possessions. Sarah wanted to redecorate, which meant removing the last traces of Mom from our home. When I found her throwing away Mom's photo albums, I grabbed them and ran to my room. Sarah told Dad I had disrespected her and stolen things. He yelled at me for the first time in my life that night. I cried myself to sleep clutching Mom's photos, the only proof I had that I was once loved completely. By the time I turned 12, our home had become a battlefield with me fighting a war I couldn't win. Sarah had mastered the art of turning my father against me, making every interaction between us strained and uncomfortable. She would whisper things to him when I walked by, and his eyes would follow me with suspicion I didn't deserve. Jessica had learned from her mother's playbook. She would break things and blame me, tell lies about things I supposedly said, and even steal my homework to make me look irresponsible. When confronted, she would cry, and Sarah would comfort her while giving me cold, victorious glances. They were a team, and I was their chosen enemy. Summer came, and they planned a family vacation to Disneyland. I was actually excited, thinking maybe away from the house things would be better. The night before we were supposed to leave, I overheard them talking about flight arrangements. They had only booked 3 tickets. When I asked about mine, Sarah claimed there must have been a mistake with the booking system. They promised to sort it out, but something in their voices told me this was no error. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. No note, no explanation. They had left while I was sleeping. I called my dad's cell phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. I sat on the front steps for hours, convinced they would return, that they wouldn't really leave a 12-year-old alone. As the sun set, I finally accepted what had happened. 3 days later, they returned tanned and full of stories. When I asked how they could leave me, my father looked me straight in the eyes and said, "It was better this way. Jessica gets scared on planes, and you're old enough to stay home alone." That night I couldn't sleep. I crept downstairs for a glass of water and heard Sarah and my father talking in the kitchen. I froze in the hallway when I heard my name. "Daisy is nothing but trouble," Sarah was saying. "She's always fighting with Jessica, always making things difficult." "I know," my father replied, and his words cut through me like a knife. "We picked the better child. Jessica is easier, she's happier. She doesn't make me think of Lynn all the time." The floor creaked beneath me, and they both looked up. The look on my father's face when he realized I had heard everything wasn't shame or regret. It was annoyance, as if I had inconvenienced him by discovering the truth. "How could you say that?" I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm your daughter, your real daughter." "Now you're just being dramatic," Sarah cut in. "This is exactly the kind of behavior we're talking about." "Is that true, Dad?" I pressed, ignoring her. "You think Jessica is better than me? You wish I wasn't your daughter." He couldn't even look at me. "Go to your room, Daisy. We'll talk about this in the morning." But there was no talk the next morning. Instead, my father informed me I would be staying with Aunt Martha for a while, until things cooled down. They packed a small suitcase for me, not even half my clothes, and drove me across town to my mother's sister's apartment. Aunt Martha was surprised to see us. No one had called to make arrangements. My father spoke to her privately while Sarah waited in the car with Jessica, who smirked at me through the window. 20 minutes later, my father returned, handed Martha an envelope, and left without even saying goodbye to me. "It's just temporary," Martha assured me, though she looked uncertain. "Your father says he needs some time to figure things out." The temporary stay became permanent when a week later my father dropped off more of my belongings and paperwork, transferring guardianship to Martha. He didn't come himself. He sent a coworker from his construction company. There was a note that said, "This is better for everyone. Please don't contact us." I collapsed when Martha showed me the note. All the air seemed to leave my body. I had been abandoned by my own father, thrown away like something broken beyond repair. Martha didn't know what to do with me at first. She was single, worked long hours as a nurse, and had never planned on having children. Having me thrust upon her was a shock, and initially I could feel her resentment. The first months with Martha were hard. I barely spoke, barely ate. My grades plummeted. I started having nightmares where I was running through our old house, but no one could see or hear me. I was a ghost in my own life. The school counselor suggested therapy, but Martha couldn't afford it on her salary. On my 13th birthday, I tried one last time to reach my father. I called his cell phone rehearsing what I would say. The number had been disconnected. I called his work only to be told he no longer worked there. They had moved away. No forwarding address. No way to contact them. That was when I truly understood I had been erased from his life completely. I spent my birthday alone in Martha's apartment, looking at old photos of my mother, wondering if she would have fought for me if she had lived. Wondering what was so wrong with me that my own father could throw me away. The day after my failed attempt to contact my father on my birthday, something shifted in Aunt Martha. She came home from her nursing shift with a small cake and a determined look in her eyes. "I failed your mother," she said, setting the cake between us. "Lynn would never forgive me for letting you suffer like this. From now on, we're family. Really family. We'll figure this out together." Martha wasn't naturally maternal. She was blunt, sometimes awkward, and had no idea how to talk to a traumatized teenager. But what she lacked in softness, she made up for in fierce loyalty. She switched to day shifts so she could be home in the evenings. She decorated the small spare room with posters and a colorful bedspread, making it feel less temporary. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in a complex that had seen better days. The walls were thin, the appliances ancient, and we shared a bathroom smaller than some closets. Martha worked as a nurse at County Hospital, making just enough to support herself before I came along. Adding a growing teenager to her budget meant serious sacrifices. I watched her clip coupons at the kitchen table, saw how she wore the same scrubs until they practically fell apart. She never complained, but I knew having me was a financial burden she hadn't planned for. It made me try to be smaller somehow, to need less, want less, take up less space. "Your mom and I didn't talk much after she married your dad," Martha confessed one night as we ate macaroni and cheese for the 3rd time that week. "I didn't like him much, thought she could do better. We argued about it, and then we just stopped calling each other. By the time she got sick, it felt too late to fix things. I'll always regret that." Her honesty made me feel less alone. We were both grieving my mother, both feeling like we'd failed her in some way. It created a bond between us, fragile at first, but growing stronger each day. School remained difficult. My former friends didn't know how to act around me now that my family situation had changed so dramatically. Rumors spread. Some kids said my dad sent me away because I did something terrible. Others made fun of my secondhand clothes and the free lunches I now qualified for. Mrs. Winters, my English teacher, noticed my struggle. She started lending me books, giving me a quiet place in her classroom to eat lunch, and staying after school to help me catch up on the work I'd fallen behind on. She never asked direct questions about what happened, just created a safe space for me to exist without judgment. "You have a wonderful mind, Daisy," she told me one afternoon. "Don't let your circumstances define your future. Your story is still being written." Slowly, I started to rebuild. My grades improved. I made a few new friends who didn't know my past and didn't care that I lived in the poor part of town. Jessica had been popular and outgoing. I found my place among the quieter kids, the ones who loved books and science and didn't care about designer clothes. When I turned 16, I got my first job at the local grocery store, bagging items and collecting carts. The pay was minimal, but it meant I could buy my own clothes and school supplies. More importantly, it meant I wasn't completely dependent on Martha's stretched resources. There was pride in that small independence. Working taught me about money in ways most kids my age never learned. I watched Martha budget carefully, pay bills on time, and avoid the credit card debt that trapped many of her coworkers. When my first paycheck came, she showed me how to set aside a portion for savings, no matter how small. "Money doesn't buy happiness," she told me, "but it buys options. Always make sure you have options." It was around this time that I discovered my aptitude for computers and technology. Our high school had recently upgraded its computer lab, and I found peace in the logical world of programming. Computers didn't care about your family history or where you lived. They responded to what you told them, predictable and fair, in a way humans often weren't. Mr. Rodriguez, the computer science teacher, noticed my interest and started giving me extra projects. He even arranged for me to use the lab after school hours, knowing I didn't have a computer at home. "You've got a natural talent," he said. "This could be your ticket to college if you stick with it." College had seemed like an impossible dream. Even with scholarships, how could we afford it? But Martha refused to let me give up before I'd even tried. "We'll find a way," she insisted. "Your mother would want you to go. I want you to go." A community formed around us in unexpected ways. The elderly couple next door who watched out for me when Martha worked late. Martha's coworker Diane who drove me to school on rainy days. The grocery store manager who scheduled my hours around exam periods. None of them could replace what I'd lost, but together they created a safety net I hadn't realized I needed. By senior year, I had transformed from the broken girl Martha inherited to someone with plans and possibilities. I graduated top of my class, earning a partial scholarship to State University for computer science. When they called my name at graduation, I heard Martha's voice above all others, whooping and cheering like her life depended on it. In that moment, I realized that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who stands up and cheers for you when everyone else has walked away. The transition from high school to college hit like a tidal wave. I'd been accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, but that still left thousands in tuition, room and board, and textbooks unaccounted for. Student loans covered some of it, but I was determined not to saddle myself with crippling debt before my adult life had even begun. My first semester, I juggled classes with 2 part-time jobs, working 20 hours a week at the university library shelving books, and another 15 hours waiting tables at an off-campus diner. Sleep became a luxury. More than once, I dozed off during morning lectures, only to jolt awake to find drool on my notebook and sympathetic looks from classmates. The computer science program was dominated by guys who seemed to have been coding since kindergarten. Many came from wealthy families with tech industry connections, their paths smoothly paved with opportunities I could only dream about. In group projects, they initially dismissed my ideas, assuming my scholarship was diversity-based rather than merit-earned. I had to work twice as hard to prove my worth, staying up late to perfect code while my wealthier peers socialized. Despite the challenges, I thrived academically. There was something about the structured logic of programming that felt safe and predictable compared to the chaos of human relationships. Computers didn't judge your background or play favorites. They simply responded to the quality of your instructions. By sophomore year, I had found my tribe. Amy, an engineering major with a wicked sense of humor who never apologized for taking up space. Jordan, a philosophy student who asked the big questions and made the best midnight pancakes in our study group. Marcus, another scholarship kid who understood the pressure of being the first in his family to attend college. They became my chosen family, filling the emptiness left by those who had abandoned me. "You never talk about your family," Amy noted during a late-night study session as finals approached. The others had shared holiday horror stories, but I had remained silent. "Not much to tell," I replied, focusing intently on my laptop screen. "Just my aunt and me." "But you grew up with your parents, right? Before your aunt," she pressed. The room grew quiet. I could feel their curiosity, their concern. "My mom died when I was 10, I finally said. "My dad decided he didn't want me anymore when I was 12. Picked my stepsister over me. Literally told me she was the better child." I'd never stated it so bluntly before. The words hung in the air, stark and painful. Marcus was the first to speak. "Their loss, Dice. Seriously, their fucking loss." That simple validation broke something open in me. For the first time, I shared the full story of my abandonment with people my own age. They listened without judgment, offering no platitudes, just the gift of bearing witness to my pain. By the time I finished, Amy was furiously wiping away tears. Jordan was planning elaborate revenge scenarios, and Marcus had ordered pizza, insisting that heavy emotional revelations required carbohydrates. That night marked a turning point in my healing. Having friends who knew the worst thing that had happened to me and still chose to stick around eased the constant fear of being discarded again. Junior year brought new challenges and opportunities. I landed an internship at Horizon Tech, a promising startup developing inventory management software. The position was competitive and paid enough that I could reduce my other work hours. More importantly, it gave me real-world experience in the field I was growing to love. My supervisor, Alicia, became another important mentor. A 30-something coding genius who had climbed the tech ladder despite industry sexism, she took me under her wing and showed me not just technical skills, but how to navigate corporate politics. "Never apologize for being in the room," she advised. Men never do. Just as things were looking up, Martha called with news that sent my world spiraling again. She'd been having headaches for months but dismissed them as stress. A scan revealed a benign brain tumor that required surgery. The procedure had risks but wasn't optional. Even with insurance, the medical bills would be substantial. The recovery would take months. I nearly dropped out to care for her, but Martha refused to hear of it. "You finished that degree," she insisted from her hospital bed, her voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. "I didn't help raise you this far to see you quit now." Once again, community saved us. Martha's nursing colleagues arranged a schedule to check on her daily. My boss at Horizon Tech allowed me to work remotely 2 days a week so I could travel home more often. My friends took notes in classes I had to miss and quizzed me before exams I had barely studied for. The diner manager kept my job open despite my reduced availability. Martha's recovery was slow but steady. Each week she grew stronger, more like herself. By the time I entered senior year, she was back at work on light duty. The medical bills were a burden we would carry for years, but we were managing. Graduation day arrived with a mixture of pride and disbelief. As I crossed the stage in my cap and gown to receive my computer science degree with honors, I scanned the audience. Martha sat in the family section, now fully recovered, beaming with pride. Beside her were Amy's parents, who had adopted me into their family traditions. Jordan and Marcus whooped as my name was called. In that moment, surrounded by the family I had built for myself, I realized something profound. The abandonment that once defined me had become just one chapter in a much larger story. A painful chapter, yes, but no longer the whole book. With degree in hand, I accepted a full-time position at Horizon Tech. My starting salary was more money than Martha or I had ever seen. The first thing I did was move her out of the cramped apartment that had been our home for 8 years and into a comfortable 2-bedroom unit in a safer neighborhood with an elevator and functioning air conditioning. "This is too much," she protested as I showed her the new place. "This is just the beginning," I promised. "Just wait and see." Over the next decade, my career trajectory resembled a rocket launch. I quickly outgrew Horizon Tech, moving to larger companies, with each job change building my reputation as an innovative problem solver. By 28, I was leading development teams. By 30, I had patents to my name. By 34, I had reached senior director level at Tech Forward, one of the largest software companies on the West Coast. My professional success came with financial security I had once thought impossible. I owned a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with a garden that would have made my mother proud. My investments were carefully managed, creating a safety net that ensured I would never be financially vulnerable again. I had helped Martha retire early, buying her a small house near mine and setting up accounts to cover her needs. "You've done enough for me," she protested when I showed her the house. "I can never do enough," I told her honestly. "You saved my life." Despite external success, my personal life remained complicated. I dated, but relationships tended to falter once they became serious. The moment someone got too close, old fears would surface. What if they decided I wasn't worth keeping? What if they found someone better? I had been in therapy for years, working through my abandonment issues, but some scars ran too deep to fully heal. My closest friends understood my boundaries and respected them. Amy had married and had twin boys who called me Auntie Daisy and demanded coding lessons whenever I visited. Jordan had become a professor, still asking the big questions but with tenure. Marcus ran a nonprofit helping underprivileged kids access technology education. They remained my chosen family, the people who had seen me at my worst and loved me anyway. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm until a Tuesday in October changed everything. I was working late finalizing a presentation for our board meeting when I stepped into the break room for coffee. The night cleaning crew was just starting their shift. As I doctored my coffee with cream, a familiar profile caught my eye. A woman was checking the supply closet, her back to me, but something about the way she moved triggered a memory. When she turned, I nearly dropped my mug. Beneath the unflattering uniform and tired eyes, I recognized Jessica, my stepsister, the better child. She had aged more than her 29 years should account for her face lined with stress, her once proud posture now stooped with fatigue. She didn't recognize me at first. Why would she? the shy, heartbroken 12-year-old had transformed into a confident professional woman. I managed to leave the break room before she noticed me staring, my heart pounding as I retreated to my office. Over the next week, I observed her from a distance. She worked the night shift cleaning offices and bathrooms, emptying trash cans and mopping floors. She kept to herself, avoiding interaction with the few employees working late. Once I overheard a junior manager speaking sharply to her about a missed spot, and Jessica's defeated apology twisted something inside me. Curiosity eventually overrode caution. I asked HR about the cleaning company we contracted with, claiming I wanted to commend one of their workers. A few strategic questions to the building security team, who knew everything about everyone, filled in more blanks. Jessica had been working there for 3 months. Before that, a string of similar jobs. She lived in Parkside Apartments, a rundown complex on the outskirts of town, known for its low rents and high crime rate. The real shock came when I learned she wasn't alone there. My father and Sarah lived with her. Thomas had suffered a major stroke 2 years earlier, leaving him partially paralyzed and unable to work. Their construction business had failed after a series of poor investments and economic downturns. Sarah's gambling addiction, which apparently began years ago, had drained their savings. Jessica had dropped out of the community college program they could no longer afford and taken on the responsibility of supporting them all. My initial reaction was ugly satisfaction. They had chosen the better child, and now that choice was scrubbing toilets while I sat in a corner office. The family that discarded me was now struggling to survive. There was a certain poetic justice in it that fed the wounded child still living inside me. But as days passed, that satisfaction soured. What did it say about me that I took pleasure in anyone's suffering, even those who had hurt me so deeply? The vengeance I had occasionally fantasized about over the years felt hollow now that it was reality. For weeks I debated whether to approach Jessica or simply maintain my distance. What would be gained by revealing myself? What wounds might be reopened? I discussed it with my therapist, who reminded me that any decision I made needed to serve my healing, not my hurt. Closure is a myth, she told me, but clarity is possible. What clarity would speaking to Jessica bring you? The question lingered as I watched my stepsister from afar, wondering what version of our shared past she believed, wondering if she ever thought about the sister who disappeared from her life. After 3 weeks of indecision, I found myself lingering in the break room one night as Jessica came in to refill her cleaning cart. We were alone the office floor, otherwise deserted at 9:30 p.m. She kept her head down efficiently, gathering supplies, unaware of my presence until I cleared my throat. "Jessica," I said softly. She turned customer service smile at the ready, then froze as recognition dawned slowly on her face. "Daisy, is that really you?" The shock in her voice was genuine, her eyes wide as she took in my appearance, my clothes, the security badge that marked me as senior management. "It's me," I confirmed, my voice steadier than I felt. "It's been a long time." Her cleaning cart stood between us like a physical manifestation of the life differences that now separated us. Jessica gripped its handle as if for support. "You work here?" she asked, glancing at my outfit. "I'm a director in the software division. I've been here about 3 years." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. "What do you say to the person who replaced you in your own family?" "How long have you known I work here?" she finally asked, her voice taking on a defensive edge. "A few weeks. I wasn't sure if I should say anything." "Why would you?" she replied bitterly. "It's not like we're family." The words stung more than I expected. "No, I suppose we're not. Not anymore." Jessica's face flushed. "You left us. You chose to go live with your aunt." Dad was devastated. The revision of history was so blatant it momentarily took my breath away. "Is that what they told you, that I chose to leave? You didn't want to be part of our family. You made that clear." 20 years of suppressed anger bubbled to the surface. I was 12 years old. My father dropped me at my aunt's apartment and transferred legal guardianship without even saying goodbye. He told me I'd been selected out, that you were the better child. I didn't choose anything. Jessica's expression shifted from defensiveness to confusion. "That's not what happened. Mom said you were unhappy living with us, that you begged to go live with your aunt because you hated us." And you believed that a child would choose to abandon her only surviving parent. I was 10, she said quietly. I believed what they told me. We stared at each other, two women processing the realization that the story that had shaped both our lives might be built on lies. We should talk, I said finally. Not here, not now, but soon. Jessica glanced at the clock nervously. I have to finish this floor by 11. Tomorrow there's a coffee shop across the street. I could meet you before your shift. She hesitated, conflict playing across her features. Why? Why after all this time? It was a fair question, one I was still asking myself. Because I think we both deserve to know the truth. About everything. Jessica agreed to meet me, though. Reluctance shadowed her eyes. As she pushed her cart toward the door, she paused. You've done well for yourself. I've survived, I corrected. That's not always the same thing. The next day I arrived at the coffee shop 30 minutes early, securing a quiet table in the corner. Jessica arrived exactly on time, still wearing her bus clothes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that emphasized the premature lines around her eyes. Our conversation started awkwardly, skipping between meaningless pleasantries and long silences. But as the caffeine kicked in, the barriers began to crumble. Dad's had a stroke, she blurted suddenly. 2 years ago. He's partially paralyzed on his left side, can barely talk. I heard, I admitted. I'm sorry. Are you? She challenged. I can be sorry he's suffering and still be angry about the past. Both things can be true. She nodded slowly. We've lost everything. The business, the house, our savings. Mom. She hesitated. Sarah has a gambling problem, has for years. Dad enabled it, covered for her. By the time I was old enough to understand what was happening, the damage was done. As Jessica spoke, a more complete picture emerged. After abandoning me, they had moved to Arizona for a fresh start. Dad expanded his construction business during the housing boom, becoming briefly successful. Jessica had been the golden child, given everything I had been denied: college fund, nice clothes, dance lessons, family vacations. But the facade had cracks from the beginning. They fought all the time, she confessed. About money, about her spending, about his drinking. It got worse after the business started failing. I thought all families were like that. When the housing market collapsed, so did their financial stability. Sarah's gambling intensified as a means of escape, digging them deeper into debt. By the time Thomas suffered his stroke, they were already on the brink of financial ruin. We lost the house 6 months later. Had to move back here because medical care is better. I dropped out of college to work full-time. Someone had to pay the bills. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The daughter they had chosen, the better child, was now trapped in a life of sacrifice and struggle because of their poor choices. Did they ever talk about me? I asked the question that had lingered for decades, finally finding voice. Jessica stared into her coffee. Not really. When I was younger and asked about you, they'd change the subject. As I got older, I just assumed you wanted nothing to do with us. There were no pictures of you, no mentions of your birthday. It was like you never existed. Her words reopened wounds I thought had scarred over. They hadn't just abandoned me physically. They'd erased me from their narrative completely. I tried to find you once, Jessica admitted. When I was 19, I was curious about the sister I barely remembered. Dad caught me searching your name online and got so angry I never tried again. What would you have said if you'd found me? She shrugged. I don't know. Maybe asked why you hated us so much. Now I wonder if I ever knew the real story at all. Over the next hour, we compared versions of the past, fitting together puzzle pieces to reveal the complete picture. The family Jessica remembered, the attentive father, the fun adventures, was unrecognizable to me. It was as if Thomas had been two different people, capable of loving one daughter while discarding the other. I need to see him, I said finally. After all these years, I need to hear the truth from him directly. Jessica's expression clouded. He's not the same person anymore. The stroke, it changed him, and Sarah won't want you there. I don't care what Sarah wants. This isn't about her. After some negotiation, Jessica agreed to arrange a meeting. As we prepared to leave, she asked the question that clearly troubled her most. Are you going to get me fired, now that you know I'm working at your company? The question revealed how vulnerable she felt, how precarious her position was. No, your job is safe. This isn't about punishing you, Jessica. You were a child too. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. We really need the income. As we parted ways outside the coffee shop, an unexpected sense of lightness filled me. The anger I had carried for so long had not disappeared, but it had shifted somehow, making room for something new. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps understanding. The address Jessica gave me led to a cramped second-floor apartment in a complex that had seen better decades. Paint peeled from the railings and several windows were patched with duct tape, a far cry from the comfortable home my father had once provided. Jessica met me at the door, anxiety etched across her features. I told them you were coming, she said quietly. Dad seemed interested. Sarah is angry. Some things never change, I replied, squaring my shoulders as I stepped inside. The apartment was clean but depressing. Mismatched furniture crowded the small living space, most of it worn and dated. The air smelled of medication and desperation. In a recliner by the window sat my father, or what remained of him. Thinner, grayer, diminished in ways that shocked me despite my mental preparation. His left side drooped noticeably, and his gaze seemed unfocused until it landed on me. Recognition flashed in his eyes, followed by something I couldn't quite identify. Shame, regret, or merely surprise. Sarah stood beside him, her once attractive features now hardened by time and bitterness. She had gained weight, and her dyed blonde hair couldn't hide the gray at her roots. Her arms crossed defensively as I entered. What do you want? She demanded without preamble. Come to gloat. Hello to you too, Sarah, I replied calmly. It's been 22 years. I think we're due for a conversation. We have nothing to say to you, she snapped. I think that's for my father to decide. I moved closer to Thomas, kneeling so we were eye level. Hello, Dad. He struggled visibly, his mouth working to form words that came with difficulty. Daisy, he finally managed, his voice slurred but understandable. Yes, it's me. Up close, I could see the damage the stroke had done, not just physically but in his eyes. The confident, authoritative father of my childhood was gone, replaced by an old man trapped in a failing body. You shouldn't be here, Sarah interjected. You'll upset him. I think he's been upset for a long time, I replied without looking at her. Haven't you, Dad? Jessica hovered nervously between us, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. Maybe we should all sit down, she suggested. Talk calmly. I took a seat on the worn sofa across from my father. Sarah remained standing, a sentry guarding her territory. Jessica perched on the arm of the couch, ready to intervene if needed. I know what happened now, I began. The real story, not the version you told Jessica. I know you abandoned me, chose her, erased me from your lives. Sarah scoffed. Always so dramatic. We did what was best for everyone. Best for who? A 12-year-old girl left with a relative who barely knew her. How was that best for me? You were impossible, Sarah insisted. Always fighting, always difficult. I was grieving my mother, and you were deliberately pushing me out. My father made a noise, drawing our attention. His good hand trembled as he pointed at Sarah, then made a dismissive gesture. What is he trying to say? I asked Jessica, who had more practice interpreting his post-stroke communication. I think he wants her to leave, Jessica said hesitantly, to let you two talk alone. Sarah's face flushed with anger. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of me. I turned back to my father. Is that what you want Dad to talk to me alone? He nodded, the movement jerky but definitive. Thomas, you can't possibly, Sarah began, but he cut her off with a sharp sound, his one working hand slamming against the arm of his chair. The small act of defiance seemed to cost him enormous effort. Jessica touched Sarah's arm gently. Mom, please, just give them a few minutes. After more protest, Sarah finally agreed to wait in the bedroom, making it clear she was doing so under protest. Once the door closed behind them, a heavy silence filled the room. My father's eyes held mine more lucid than they had seemed initially. He gestured toward a pad and pen on the side table. Jessica brought it to him, positioning it where he could reach with his good hand. His writing was shaky but legible. 3 words, I was wrong. Such simple words to acknowledge such a profound betrayal. Yes, you were. I agreed, my voice thick with emotion. You threw me away like I meant nothing. Like I was garbage. He struggled to write more, the effort causing beads of sweat to form on his forehead. Sarah controlled everything. Turned me against you. I let her. You were the parent, I replied, anger rising despite my determination to stay calm. You were supposed to protect me. After Mom died, you were all I had left. Wrong choice. He wrote, his hand trembling more violently. Regret every day. Regret doesn't undo damage, I said. Do you have any idea what you did to me? How long I believed there was something fundamentally unlovable about me because my own father could discard me so easily. Tears filled his eyes, rolling down his slack cheek. Sorry, he wrote, then underlined it 3 times. A lifetime of hurt couldn't be erased by one apology, but something shifted inside me as I watched this broken man acknowledge his greatest failure. The monster who had haunted my nightmares for decades was just a flawed human who had made a terrible choice and lived with the consequences. I didn't come for revenge, I said finally. I built a good life despite what you did. I have a career, I love a home of my own people who care about me. I'm not the abandoned child anymore. He nodded, a mixture of sadness and what looked like pride crossing his features. Jessica, he wrote. She told me about your situation, about her dropping out of school, working multiple jobs. Shame clouded his expression. Failed her too, he managed to write. Yes, I agreed bluntly. You set her up with expectations of privilege, then left her carrying the burden of your and Sarah's poor choices. The bedroom door opened abruptly as Sarah re-entered, clearly having been listening at the door. That's enough, she declared. I think you should leave now. I rose slowly, looking down at the woman who had engineered my removal from my own family. She had been the architect of so much pain, yet now she seemed smaller, somehow less formidable. You won, I told her quietly. You got what you wanted. Me gone, Jessica as your daughter, my father's complete attention. How did that work out for everyone? She flinched as if I'd slapped her. You have no right to judge us. You have no idea what we've been through. And you had no idea what I went through, but that didn't stop you from destroying a child's life, did it? I turned back to my father. I don't hate you anymore. That's what I came to say. I don't forgive you either, not yet. But I don't hate you. His good hand reached for mine, grasping it weakly. Thank you, he mouthed, no sound emerging. As I prepared to leave, Jessica walked me to the door. That went better than I expected, she admitted. No one threw anything. Low bar, I observed with a hint of gallows humor. Will I see you again? She asked, uncertainty in her voice. I considered the question carefully. I think so. We have a lot more to talk about, but I need some time to process all of this. She nodded, understanding in her eyes. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. It wasn't your fault, I assured her. You were just a kid. We both were. As I walked to my car, the weight I had carried for 2 decades felt lighter, not gone but changed somehow. I hadn't found the Hollywood ending where all was forgiven and forgotten, but I had found something perhaps more valuable, the truth spoken and acknowledged at last. Over the following months, a careful, tentative relationship formed between Jessica and me. We met for coffee every couple of weeks, slowly filling in the gaps of our separate lives, discovering the adults we had become. She was smart and resilient in ways I hadn't expected, with a dry sense of humor that occasionally broke through her weariness. During our 3rd meeting, I made her an offer. I know a program at the community college. Night classes in healthcare administration. The schedule would work around your cleaning job and I could help with the tuition. Her pride flared immediately. I don't need charity. It's not charity, I clarified. It's opportunity. The same kind I had when people helped me. You deserve a chance to build your own life, not just survive supporting theirs. After initial resistance, Jessica agreed. She enrolled in courses that would eventually lead to a certificate that could open doors to better employment. Watching her tackle homework with determination after exhausting night shifts reminded me of my own college struggles, creating an unexpected bond between us. My relationship with my father developed differently. His health continued to decline, making communication increasingly difficult. Yet, in our limited interactions, a kind of peace emerged. Not the close father-daughter relationship that had been lost forever, but a human connection that acknowledged both the pain of the past and the reality of the present. Sarah remained hostile, viewing my reappearance as a threat to her position. She made constant demands for financial help, which I addressed strategically. I established a medical fund for my father's care with specific conditions that prevented Sarah from accessing the money directly. Bills were paid to providers, medications delivered to the apartment, but no cash ever changed hands. Her fury at this arrangement was palpable, but ineffective. Through it all, Aunt Martha remained my rock. At 68, she had finally retired completely, enjoying the comfortable home I had provided and the financial security she had never expected in her later years. When I told her about reconnecting with my father and Jessica, she listened without judgment. "Do you regret finding them again?" she asked one evening as we shared dinner on her patio. "Sometimes," I admitted. "It would be easier to keep them as villains in my story. Real people are more complicated." "That's the thing about healing," she observed. "It rarely follows the path we expect." Martha's wisdom had been earned through her own journey from reluctant guardian to fierce protector to beloved family. Her transformation was a testament to the power of chosen commitment, something my father had failed to demonstrate, but that I had been fortunate to receive. My personal life shifted too during this period of reconciliation. I met Daniel, a litigation attorney who had recently joined the legal team at Tech Forward. Unlike previous relationships where I had maintained emotional distance, I found myself willing to risk vulnerability with him. When he asked about my family background, I shared the full, unvarnished truth. "That's quite a story," he said when I finished. "How do you feel about them now?" "I'm still figuring that out," I answered honestly. "But I'm not defined by what they did anymore. That's progress, I think." Our relationship developed slowly, both of us carrying baggage from past disappointments. But there was something solid about Daniel, a fundamental decency, that gradually earned my trust. When he first said, "I love you," I was able to say it back without the usual fear choking the words. As Jessica completed her certificate program, I established a foundation to help children who had experienced family abandonment. The Lynette Foundation, named for my mother, provided scholarships, mentoring, and therapeutic support to young people whose families had failed them. The work became a passion, a way to transform my own pain into something constructive. At one of our foundation events, I was asked to speak about resilience. Standing at the podium, looking out at the faces of young people who had endured what no child should, I found unexpected strength in my story. "Abandonment tells you that you're unworthy of love," I told them. "That's the lie that burrows deep and tries to define you. The truth is that someone else's failure to love properly says everything about them and nothing about your worth. You are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to become despite it." 1 year after our reunion, my father suffered a second massive stroke. In the hospital waiting room, Jessica and I sat side by side while Sarah paced anxiously. The doctors were not optimistic. When we were finally allowed to see him, I took his hand gently. His eyes found mine, recognition flickering despite his deteriorated state. "I forgive you." I whispered the words I had thought might never come. "Not for you, but for me. I'm letting it go." A tear slid down his paralyzed face. He died 3 days later, a complicated man who had failed profoundly as a father, but who in the end had acknowledged the damage he'd caused. The funeral was small, attended mostly by former business associates and a few neighbors. Martha came to support me, her presence a reminder of the family we had built from necessity. In the months following his death, Jessica completed her program and secured an entry-level position at a healthcare facility. Sarah, without Thomas to focus her manipulations on, gradually revealed how truly broken she was. Her gambling addiction intensified, creating constant financial crises that Jessica struggled to manage. "You can't save her." I advised my half-sister during one particularly difficult period. Some people don't want to be helped. She's still my mother, Jessica replied, the weight of obligation heavy in her voice. Yes, but you're not just her daughter. You're your own person, with your own life to live. It was a lesson Jessica was learning slowly, just as I had the difference between loyalty and self-sacrifice, between honoring family bonds and becoming a casualty of toxic patterns. 2 years after reconnecting with my past, Daniel proposed during a weekend trip to the coast. As we walked along the shore at sunset, he dropped to one knee in the wet sand, offering not just a ring, but a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine love. Are you sure? I asked, old insecurities surfacing briefly. I come with a complicated history. We all have histories, he replied. I'm interested in our future. Our wedding was intimate, held in Martha's backyard garden. Amy, Jordan, and Marcus stood as my attendants, the friends who had become family when I needed them most. Jessica attended with her new boyfriend, a kind physical therapist she had met at work. Sarah was notably absent, having refused the invitation out of lingering resentment. As I exchanged vows with Daniel, I realized how far I had traveled from that abandoned 12-year-old. The journey had been longer and harder than it should have been, but it had brought me here to this moment of genuine happiness, to the family I had both found and created. Life continues to unfold in unexpected ways. Jessica thrives in her new career, gradually building independence from Sarah's destructive influence. Martha enjoys her role as honorary grandmother to the children Daniel and I hope to have soon. The foundation grows, reaching more young people each year. My career continues to challenge and fulfill me. Some scars remain, of course. Abandonment leaves marks that never fully disappear. But they have faded from angry red to silver, no longer wounds but reminders of survival. The words, "we picked the better child," no longer have the power to devastate me. Instead, they remind me of how far both Jessica and I have come from the children our parents failed so profoundly. What I know now is that being chosen isn't what determines your worth. What matters is choosing yourself, choosing growth over bitterness, choosing to build something meaningful from the broken pieces you were handed. That is the victory neither Thomas nor Sarah could ever take from me. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone let you down? How did you find the strength to start over? Share your story in the comments below. Remember to like this video and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you for listening to my story. No matter what hardships you're facing right now, remember that your past doesn't define your future. You are worthy of love, success, and happiness, regardless of who may have failed to see your value.